Hey Dinesh. Hello. Hello Dinesh. Am I audible to you? Hello.
Hi, hello.
Hey Dinesh. Hope I'm audible to you.
Hi. It's audible?
Yeah, you're audible to me. But I think I'm listening my echo loud.
Uh,
Maybe
is
it will.
is it echo?
Uh, Let me check once.
Yes, sure.
No, it's fine. I mean, the one which I speak, it echoes. I think it
Okay.
should be okay now. I think we're good.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Fine. So let's start.
Yeah,
Hope
we
you had
can
a good
start.
morning.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, Dinesh, meanwhile, I just go through your resume once. Can you briefly introduce yourself and maybe regarding the tech stack that you worked on and also on uh, of expertise about your Java technologies and how do you rate yourself? Maybe in a line or two is also good enough.
Yes, sure. Um, Myself, Dinesh. I'm working as a module lead in Emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
I have experience in Java, Python, and Scala programming. Uh, we have using the framework Spring Boot, microservices, backend JPA Hibernate, and front end used Angular 5 and above. Backend I was worked in a PLSQL and stored procedure technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Also cloud technology I have experience in Amazon Web Service and Pivotal Cloud Foundry.
Okay.
Also some big data experience using Hadoop and MapReduce programming.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that, I have worked a couple of messaging queue like ActiveMQ and RabbitMQ.
Mm-hmm.
Also done some automation, behavior-driven development test for using Cucumber and test-driven development using Makito.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this about my technical stack.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
How do you rate yourself on Java with respect to 10 being the highest?
Uh, I can rate it myself 7.5.
Okay, good. Good, Dinesh. Like I just went through your resume as well. I think it's evident that you have many technology experience. All right. Okay. So I mean, because you have exploratory knowledge about many things like Java, Big Data, Python, Scala. So how do you rate yourself among these three technologies like Java, Scala, and Python, which are more comfortable?
I'm more comfortable with Java
Okay.
technologies and
Mm-hmm.
Python. I can do the programming.
Mm-hmm.
The framework like Django, I have bit experience, not much. I don't have any real-time production experience on this Python and Django. Python, I was working on of the Ericsson project to monitor the system and on Python script. It is the simple script, and currently
Mm-hmm.
I am using Python for some kind of programming, coding, hacker and kind of things. I am using preferred
Okay.
Python. And
Okay.
Scala, we started POC, one of the project for the big data. Also
Mm-hmm.
we written up a couple of MapReduce program.
Mm-hmm.
But after these more than 6 month I not touch with the Scala.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
if I go with some reference, then I can start
Okay.
programming in Scala.
Sure. Then I think primarily we'll concentrate on Java itself, right? I think that's what you've been here for,
Yeah,
correct?
sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let me just share. I should just share a link with you. Maybe codeshare.io. Maybe you can just open that.
Okay.
in your system.
Okay, I will share my screen.
No, I think you start typing. I think I'll be able to see.
Yes, yes, okay. Yeah, I'm typing.
Okay, cool. So we are on the same page. Maybe you see Dinesh interview and Pradeep interview over there, right?
Yes.
Cool. Fine. We'll start with maybe a few very basic stuff, and then we'll progress from there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Fine. Right. So let's go with very basics of Java, right? So I mean, okay. Let me lay down the very baseline. Like here, I'm not here to judge. We'll just have a good technical discussion. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Like I would encourage speak out loud, not in the terms of voice, in terms of your thought processes. That's what I'm really looking out.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So voice, I'm able to hear you aptly.
Okay, so I think my headphone was not working, so I changed it to system mic. Might be it, some audio issues.
Okay. But you're okay with it, right?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yes.
Okay, Dinesh. Primarily, because it is very kind of fundamental to any Java projects. So, what is your view on JDK, JRE, and JVM?
It's a Java development kit. It is providing the option to compile the source code into the bytecode. JVM is the runtime environment. JR is a Java runtime environment. It's a provider to execute the jar file or bytecode on the JVM. So JVM is the package. Java Virtual Machine is the package. It containing both JDK and Java runtime environments both. So JVM is a platform dependent. So for example, if you want to install Windows or Linux, we want to choose the platform dependent. But the JRE, Java runtime environment, it providing the platform independent. So if I compile any bytecode, if I have any bytecode, I can run any JVM platform.
Okay. Okay. When you want to say install your application, maybe in Unix box, right? So that's where ideally it's run primarily.
Yes.
So what would you install there? Like JVM, JRE, or JDK is enough? What would you install there?
There we want to install both JDK and if we install the Java Virtual Machine, it bring the both JDK and JRE. If required, I need to set the runtime, the JDK path. So Linux, when I install it, come default, it no need to configure. But Windows, I need to configure the JRE path.
Okay. But isn't JRE just enough? Because JRE has JVM, right?
Suppose if I not going to development anything, then JDK is not required. If I want to combine my code, then JDK is required. Otherwise, JDK not required. JVM is enough.
Okay. Right. We'll move ahead.
Sure.
Okay. This may be a very basic question, but still, let's dwell up on this one. Maybe you can see the screen that I keep typing. Thanks.
Yes.
So you know this. You might have used this pretty often in any of your test code.
Yes.
So can you explain me what are these? What is system? What is about? What is println? And how is the relation between these three components?
Yes. Here the system is a class. It's providing in the JVM itself. Then out is a method, and println also method. It's a static method. So it's not required to any object to call.
We want to say out as a method, and println is also a method. Ideally in Java, methods will have this off operator, right? Something like this.
Yes.
So it gives out as something different than any of these methods.
Uh, println is a method.
Okay.
I thought it's a system. System.
Mhm.
So
So basically, we have, I mean, these are default ones which we write, like system dot out dot println. So
yes.
obviously, ideally, if default we know this. For example, there's a method called do something, which is from a class A, right?
Yes.
If you want to execute this, let's say I created A is equal to new A of, and I can say A dot do.
Yes.
But this is somewhat different, right? System dot out dot println. So how do you correlate this? We take an example at the end.
Yeah, here println is the static method. System is a class, and out also think it's a kind of design pattern they followed. Build a kind of design pattern, so we can call the more than one method using output. Out is output stream, so that also they called in the more than one method in the class level.
Okay. Okay. We'll go further. Okay. So maybe we'll take with the experience that you come up with, right? Maybe we'll do something on the examples that you have worked on. So which is the project that you really like to work amongst the ones which you have provided in the resume?
This last project is the Bank of America. This we implemented the check service. That project preferred on.
Okay, perfect. So you were part of all the pieces of it.
Yes.
Okay. So you also did a design of that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I mean, when you say about Spring Boot as one of the framework, right? So do you understand what is they are really under the Spring Boot?
Spring is the framework. The Spring Boot provides the auto configuration features. So it's not required any external configuration. We can use some default configuration to start the development. Also, we can override the configuration if it is required.
Okay. So in Spring Boot app, maybe the first class that gets, which is very primary, is maybe let's say app.java.
Yes.
This was the instance, right? So how do you think this object is getting created in the Spring container?
We are using annotation. The annotation we want to enable in the annotation called application. Also, if you want to enable any other feature, we are using the annotation. If that annotation is called, then it will create in the Spring container. It will create in the Spring container. There we'll check the if annotation is true, then it will create in the container.
So who checks this whether this annotation is there or not? Who is that guy?
The startup bean, the Spring Boot startup bean will check the annotation.
Okay. So if that Spring, the starter bean, whatever you said. So if there are two instances of that bean, can I create multiple app.java for one Spring Boot app?
Yeah, we can create, but it's a record a different port number because a Spring Boot is running on the different port. It's a record one dedicated port. So if I started one server on the one port, if I record the same on the same instance, then I need to configure another port.
Okay, but can I just still name that as app.java because let's say this, the annotations are created, you have annotated app.java with say certain configuration of Spring Boot app, something like that. And now there are two instances of the same thing, and doesn't your initial bean creator get confused? Which one should I really consider as app.java?
Uh, so
You got the question, right?
you are no, actually you are asking the application to instances or the application container to the bean is.
See, yeah. For example, when you instantiate your Spring Boot app,
Mhm.
the steps are like this, right? So first, your Spring container will come up, and it has to know what are the configurations that it has and what is the starter app for that. And to make it a starter app, you will have given some configurations or say annotations, let's say, right?
Yes.
Let's say the Spring container sees two such, say app.java with all the same configurations. So will it still take it or not?
So yeah, if you want to start the Spring Boot, we are executing Java -jar that command. That time it will initiate the container once. If I try to initiate within the same instances, it will throw the bean or bean error, bean related error. Suppose if I try to outside the, so I executing in the other instances, that time it won't throw any error because the application context it will create in the separate location in the JVM. Hello Pradeep, your audio is not heard.
Dinesh?
Yes.
Okay, we
Yeah, no, sir.
hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, it's audible, yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
No.
So you were saying about the Spring Boot. Please repeat. Sorry, catch up with that.
Yes. Regarding the Spring Boot initialization, if you do the Spring initialization 2 times in the same container, then it will throw the error. Suppose it is in the different application context, it won't throw any error. Suppose within the instance, if I create the bean in the 2 times, for example, the class name in the 2 times in the different package also, it will throw the error.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So maybe I just pasted a piece of code in
Okay.
your editor.
Yes.
Maybe can you edit this code and explain me what it does, and do you see any mistake, or does it compile? Can you just do that?
Okay, sure.
Line number 21 to line number 47.
Okay. it will throw the compilation error.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Which line?
Line number 27 and 23. This record return type.
Okay. Okay. 27 and 23. Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Let's say I have something return true for this, and for line number 27 I have written 0. Let us see.
Yes, sure.
Rest everything is fine.
Yeah, I'm checking it.
Sure. Sure.
Also the line number 43, here the signature is fine, but the method type, the private here mentioned, so it will create a compilation error.
What happened here? So why does it show?
Line number 43, we are overriding the get to word in file method from the parent clause. Here the problem will come because the signature only we can change it. For example, the file input parameters. Here one is a file as input parameter that we can change it, but the type of the method above it is not a private method, but here we are mentioning private. It will throw the error.
Okay, so let's say just for instance, I will make it as a public. No issues on this.
I hope the line number 26 it will be the protected the default. So here also if protected only it will work, otherwise the compilation error will come.
Okay, so let's say I make it as default.
Yeah, this time the compilation error won't come.
Okay, fine. So you don't see any issue in this part. It's okay. No issues in this part.
Yes, it's no issues.
Okay, so let's say I create an object of only text files, and then let's say I use all of this. I have, let's say this. Yeah, I have another class. Let's test. Yeah. Let's say I create objects of this all file. Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
So what do I get here?
No, this line number 53 method is static. We are trying to call in the object level, so it will throw the error. Check file is the static method. So the scope is in the class name level, not object level.
Okay. So this one, does this work? You said it's only text files.
Yes, this time it will call in the only text file method, static method. Suppose if it is in the all files, then it will call from the parent method, static method. So in this case, yeah, it won't create any error. But here we are mentioning the override, then that will create the compilation error. The line number 36 is.
Okay. Okay. So the exceptions that you said now which would get thrown, so they all part of checked or unchecked exceptions.
This
Whenever
is
compilation issues or throw there's an exception that happens there.
yeah, it is a checked exception because it is happen at the compile time. So we can consider it's a checked exception.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on. Right.
Sure.
Um, let's say you have a list of items. Okay, maybe you can write the code for that. Maybe that will help actually.
Yeah, sure. List of string
You're
is.
typing that, right?
Yeah, I'm typing it.
Maybe I'll type the question. Maybe I'll type the question.
Yeah, sure.
For that, maybe you can answer that. Okay. Okay. So the question can be something like this. So let's say you have a string. Let's say it is my name is Joker start. Right. So
Okay.
let's say I want to know three things. First, so let's say count of all uppercase letters. Okay.
Yes.
Next, count of all lowercase letters. And if you combine, or let's say, okay, combine those characters, or maybe both of them, which is like uppercase and lowercase. I mean, should it give, and how do you make it give that length of the string, combined string, is equal to length of the string input. Maybe, okay, let me just trim it down if that is troubling. You got the question?
The last line, it's getting reloading.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Maybe you can take 5 minutes of time.
Okay. So would you explain the last one, the combine of?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe let's say Dinesh, right?
Yes.
Dinesh. So this is my input string. Okay. Now, how many uppercase I have? I have one, and I have lowercase as 5. Right.
Yes.
So 5 plus 1 comes out to be 6. Right?
Yes.
So I just want to give, I mean, maybe just by taking the example above, you can just evaluate that. Like at the end of the day, when I combine, like say uppercase and lowercase or whatever the cases that you find, should be equal to the total length of the given string.
Okay.
Any doubts?
Yeah, no doubts. I got it. But here the screen showing unexpected error occurred. Please, sorry for the trouble like that. I getting an error message. I'm refreshing again. Still. Okay, I got. Yeah, it's loaded. Yeah, it's loaded.
Oh. Okay.
So shall I start program?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like prototype or algo, maybe at least a method which gives me, yeah, describes the logic and what all you do the check and test and all.
Okay.
If you are comfortable with the question, maybe you can explain and maybe you can proceed with the code.
Yes, here I will take the input string in a method and I will split based on two array string of array. Then I move the each every element. It is a character array. I can convert the character into the ASCII code. ASCII code, the small letter and capital letter, there is letters from I thought it's a small letter starting from 67 to 56 to 67, 56 plus 26. Also the upper letters 97 plus 26. If within the range I can identify whether it is uppercase or lowercase. I will count the each and every letter character. Finally I make the addition of total length. So here it have the extra space also, but I will check in the ASCII method whether within the range only. If it is between the range only, I will do the increment, otherwise I won't do the increment. So I can find out length, total length.
Okay, but I am looking for something like it should be equal. The combined length, string lengths that you are going to split and do whatever should be equal to the string length of the given input. The count should match. The way how I gave you 5 plus 1 matched in Dinesh example. 5 plus 1 matched 6, which is actually the length of the string. Okay. So what extra you would have to do?
Yeah, here.
See, I'm not. And if you read the question again, combine the uppercase and lowercase.
Mm.
How do you tell that length of the combined string is equal to the length of the string input? I'm not asking you whether it is equal or not. I'm asking you how do you make it equal? Okay, maybe if you can start with the first thing, whatever you said, right?
Yes.
Later, maybe I can give you some light on that. Maybe initiate with that.
Okay, so yeah, sure. So the finally I want to add some extra characters, right? What? Okay.
Yeah.
So here I found the upper letter and lower number of letters. So should I find the suppose if I take this number Dinesh, here lower upper is 1 and lower is 5, so here I will find the total is 6.
Hey, sorry, Dinesh.
Yeah, no.
So I see there is no accumulator yet, but you just check that. Does it still go okay?
No, the last point I have the question. So here
Okay, go on.
combination of two string is equal to the input. So in the input, if I have some space like this, the my name is Joker. So should I put any character in the space or?
Mm, maybe you can take all those as a separate character, a separate component.
Okay.
Can you check that?
Yes.
No, why string is being used?
Sorry, would you repeat?
I mean, I didn't get there is a string buffer here.
To combine these two value, I used the string buffer.
To combine two values of uppercase and lowercase,
Yes.
that you only have integer counters, right? You still need a additional object for string buffer.
So here I only have the count, make it tell the length. So that's I'm doing here. Both are I'm doing the additional and it's telling the length of both characters.
Okay. Fine, so I understand. Maybe if you can just walk through. Maybe let's hold for the string buffer and the special for the space and all space touch. Okay. So can you go through the code?
Yeah,
Pass
sure.
through with an example. Let's say my name is Kim. My name is Joker.
Yeah, sure. So here I'm taking one second, sorry.
Do you really want to take a string array there?
Yeah, sorry, here the thing I want to check the if condition. Yeah. So I taking the input and splitting into the character array in the buffer not record, and I'm iterating the array, and each element I'm passing into the a method. This method will check with whether it is uppercase or lowercase. If it is uppercase, mean it will increase the count of respective variable. The finally I'm appending the for to find the total length.
Okay. So do you really require a string array here, or do you need some other array?
Sorry, it will be character array because I'm splitting into the character array. So it will become the character array only.
Okay. Fine. So if you do this lower the buffer, so what will be the best?
Here it will check the ASCII. So character I can convert it into integer. Then it will represent in the character of ASCII code, the ASCII values. That value I am checking whether the range, I am not sure the exact range of the lowercase and uppercase. So I am checking the range. If within the range, then it is true. Otherwise, it will return the false. If true only, I will increase the count of the respective variable.
Okay. So when you say 57 here, right?
Yes.
So you are considering that to be A or something else?
No, I thought it is starting from 58. So that's why if 57 means I need to put equal. The number exactly ASCII code I'm not sure, but the 50 that range only it is starting for lowercase.
Okay. I think. Okay. I mean, okay. If I ask you in a single line, right? So, like, okay, let's say you have all these spaces, stars, and all. So, how do you consider that? Now, you have these two numbers.
Yes, here when we checking in the upper and lower, we does not consider the any character space or any special characters. So that it will omitted in this count. But here as per our requirement, we should not count the other space and other characters, right?
No, that's not said, right? I have not mentioned that you should not count.
Okay.
So, I mean, get back the actual question line, Dinesh. When I say combine those, you uppercase and lowercase, how do you make it to tell that the length of the combined string is equal to the length of the string of the input?
Okay, so I want to return whether it is combine is equal or not, is right?
Basically, upper plus lower plus x. X is your special character.
Okay. Okay, now I have the total size of the array. So I can minus the total size of the array, length minus the total. So if it is 0, then both are equal. Input string is equal. Otherwise, it is not equal.
Okay. Right. You might have used many of the data structures in your programming, right?
Yes.
So, primarily, which are the ones which comes to your mind when you say the data structures you use? At least the scenarios that you have worked on, which you have used in your projects.
So we frequently using list and hash maps. In the implementation, we using array list in the list side, and map side we are using hash map.
Okay. Right. So, I mean, maybe a out of the box question to understand how do you relate a list and a hash map, right? I mean, just to throw out your thoughts. I just want to understand what are your thoughts about that. when I say list, let's say I have around 100 numbers, okay? It's integers, 0 to 100, let us say. I want to store, and now, you have been asked to check, give me all the prime numbers from this. Okay?
Okay.
So now, and you want to store it, or you want to give one data structure to them. Because these are the items that were prime numbers. So if you're given list, would you consider putting those, like these are the prime numbers, into a map and then give that, or you would just iterate over your list and then what you would like to prefer to do?
If I choose map, then I can achieve the log of one time complexity. So I prefer the map or hash map.
How do you do it with map? You're going to do with log of 1.
Yes.
Okay. Do they do it log of 1 or big of 1?
Big O N, sorry.
Okay. Right. So if you're going to do it big of 1, then what should be the data in your map? Is it like key something and 0 to 100, or you have already a list of numbers which I provided you as an input, and you're going to put every data in, okay, you have key called prime and something else called non-prime, and then you're going to append your data into your, say, create a list inside your map, another list, and then you're going to, how do you prefer to do? It's not healthy to do.
So the input, if while I getting the input, I can calculate the prime number. So I can, if I store in the key section only, I can achieve the log of big O N. If I put on some other section like a value section or a list of key list of values, then again it will come to the big O will be become n. So I prefer the key section.
Complexity that you said, the big O, what of 1?
Big O will be n. If I choose the list of value in the key value section,
Okay.
so I can't achieve the readable. It will become the time complexity. To avoid that, I will choose the key section only.
But I already given you a list, right? So that list already has all the numbers from 1 to 100. We'll have to just segregate the lists with prime and non-prime, right? So do you really prefer to use hash maps? Because I don't see any use there, because I am trying to use another data structure, another map construct where I'm going to load, say, prime, which is again takes for some more memory, and put all the values which are prime, which is again a list inside that. So do you really think this is efficient? Because at the end of the day, when you want prime numbers, you have to iterate all the numbers that are there in your hash maps value, right?
Yeah, correct. If I find the prime number from 0 to 100, if I want to split, then I want to do the prime structure. Again, I want to create another map. The prime number I want to move within that map. I want to create map inside map, so I can read it fast in this case.
Okay. Right. So I see that you have worked on Cassandra, you have worked on MongoDB, right?
Yes.
So how do you differentiate a MySQL query with, let's say, which are compatible, MongoDB and Cassandra?
MongoDB, because Cassandra I don't have chance to work in production. We tried in the separate, some my friends are doing. So, but in the MongoDB we have done in the production environment.
Cool. So how do you differentiate a select star from in your MySQL compared to your select XYZ from a MongoDB's data?
Yeah, the normalization happen on the while executing on the select star from table or varcache in the RDBMS database. So that time the normalization happens, so it will take that time to join the data or to find out something. But in the MongoDB it happen on the insertion time, so it is faster on the read operation. So in the MongoDB is faster, also the read is very cost efficient.
But you meant to say MongoDB writes are very costly.
Yes, write is costly, read is cheap. We can easily look up.
Okay, so if I give you an opportunity to design an application where there are multiple devices that are getting added to the system, and there I mean, okay, you are about, okay, you have worked on Bank of America, right? So okay, so maybe the transactions, let us say, okay. So in a database, the users are getting added, and per user there are transaction IDs getting created, and the user is transacting simultaneously. So given this is a scenario, would you prefer to use a MySQL or a MongoDB?
Yeah, in this scenario, we should choose for MySQL because the MongoDB does not support for the ACID property or transactions. So that time the data inconsistency will happen when if we choose the MongoDB. To avoid that, the MySQL is the better option.
Okay, but let's say we are given an opportunity to introduce some queuing mechanism in between. Okay, so I don't want to store it in MySQL. I know that there is an ACID property which I miss, but still I have been given an opportunity to use MongoDB in any cases. Okay, so but you want to be, kind of near ACID property or to introduce. If you are given an opportunity to use a queuing mechanism, would you prefer using that and queue all the data and store intermittently somewhere and then store to MongoDB? Would you do that or not?
Yeah, in that case, the MongoDB, but we have some other the mechanism like ActiveMQ or this Redis. That is a better performance compared to MongoDB because MongoDB is a kind of persistence compared to it's not in memory, it is stored in the disk location. So compared to these ActiveMQ is in memory, so the ActiveMQ provides better performance compared to MongoDB. Because it's a queue.
Yeah, but writes are again not persistent, right? Like once the machine goes down, whatever is there in my let's say is it Redis, so it is gone. Right? So for banking applications, can I still use that?
Yeah, in that case, yeah, I can choose queuing mechanism, ActiveMQ or RabbitMQ for storing the data in the queue kind of thing. Also, I can make it persistent if it is required. Even the system is going out or it's shut down. Also, the data will store for some time. So I can achieve same thing.
Okay, so maybe if you go to the text editor, or maybe this may be an ask my question.
Yes,
So
sure.
I have written something like web application, which primarily keeps uploading some data, right? Let's say users data, and the same web application knows to fetch data as well, like fetch transaction. Okay.
Yes.
Now I give you an opportunity that you have certain components, let's say, as you said about ActiveMQ, and let's remove Redis for a while. Okay, let's have Redis as well. Okay, let's say Mongo, and let's say you have kind of flush mechanism where we can store it and flush it. Okay. So let's say these are the components. Okay, maybe you have some flush mechanism that you have customly written. Now, finally, the customer has asked you, I want everything in MongoDB. I want to make it as persistent because I know the reads are very fast in MongoDB, right?
Yes.
MongoDB is the final data store because he's not ready to invest in MySQL again. Okay, MongoDB data store. The rates are very high. So how maybe something like this, right? Let's say web app is defined as web app W, and say finally it has to go and sit in say MongoDB. When you flush some data, this arrow mark tells the flow of the components. Okay,
Yeah.
so just an example. So given an opportunity, how would you design something like this? You got the scenario, right?
Yes.
So can you draw the kind of component flow diagram?
Yeah, sure.
Like W, A, R, M, something like that.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Of course, W is first one and M is the last one.
Yeah, correct, got it. So first it will, the data they will feed through the web application. In the web application, it will come to the Redis. It is a flush mechanism. So here I will store the data of the Redis. Then the data it will go to the MongoDB. So the why here we are choosing Redis, it is the in memory, also it is supporting for the persistent operations. So whenever the user feeds the data through the web, it will store first in the Redis. Redis is received, then it will move to the MongoDB. It is in memory. It is faster than the MongoDB. Also, it providing mechanism like a PubSub operations. So, if I want to do some intermediate operation or something, then it's to read or write. The Redis is faster than MongoDB.
Mm-hmm. So let's say, okay, I take this as your solution. Let's take one or two questions over this. Okay, maybe I'll finish it in around 2 minutes. So let's say I have the web application and the data load is pretty huge. Okay, so and you start bombarding your Redis and you know. Okay, before I go to that question, let's say I have let's say 1,000 records that is getting uploaded. That is, this user data is 1,000 records. Okay, at once it will get loaded. So what would you think your Redis size should be? Because it's in memory, right?
Yes. Also, we can the Redis. Yeah, there is a chance to system go down in between, or any unexpected error happen. So this providing the queue or a topic kind of configuration. Here I can put in the queue, and the queue, from the queue I can run the job, I can insert into the MongoDB. Before that I can make the queue into the persistent. So persistent, once the data is arrived from web application to the Redis queue, then it will make persistent. It is a separate disk location. Even the system goes down also, we can recover the data. Once the data is read from the queue, then it will be deleted. So it memory also it will be efficient.
Okay. So, okay, in your first case, what would be your Redis configuration, and the second case, what would be your Redis configuration? Because in first case, you are going to just, from the web application, you are going to flush everything to Redis, right?
Yes.
So, maybe how much GB of RAM you would require, you would think? Say, 512 MB of RAM is enough, or you want to have more?
No, it's depends on the data size. Suppose if take a normal user data, like it's 10 KB or 100 KB it's almost required 16 or 32 GB of RAM. It's enough to perform the Redis application. Um, yeah, because it's in memory. Once data is read, then the disk space, the particular memory will be cleared. So after that,
Will it be auto clear in Redis? I mean, automatically the data will be clear in Redis, you say?
no, Redis, the queue we should create, but we don't
So
need.
you say in queue the data will be clear.
Yeah, once we read it, then it will clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah, then memory once anyway the MongoDB also once the data is reached queue, immediately our job started to insert into the MongoDB. Even it's 10,000 within the second it is loaded the 10,000 record also. The job immediately started to clear the data. So I think we can manage the space if I have the 16 GB RAM or 32 GB RAM. It is enough.
Okay. But just think over this. At any point in time, Redis is not going to help you with creating something called asset functionality, right?
Yes, Redis does not provide any asset.
MongoDB default does not support that because it's a document store.
Yes.
Okay. From the web application, though I use Redis or not, though I use ActiveMQ and Redis or MongoDB, my data is not an asset. So can't I just use my ActiveMQ and push it to MongoDB? I don't need Redis. Because if there is an intermediate layer which is going to say organize my data into say multiple topics getting combined into one topic, and you're going to create one data which is like a JSON format, and you can store it in your MongoDB. If that would have happened, then yes. But here Redis is not helping me in any which case, right?
Yes, I agree. Here Redis does not providing any kind of transaction related thing or any kind of thing. Also MongoDB also can do Redis kind of thing. But the only thing is the MongoDB, it's as per the design MongoDB, the normalization happen on the insertion time. So if you want to do some embedded document, like I want to make the user object, I want to combine their address, finally I want to store in the MongoDB. For find out the address from the different document, or if I want to do some logical operation in the document, that time it will take some time to insert in the MongoDB. To avoid that the few seconds of time I am storing in the Redis. There is no logical operation in the document. Similarly, I am putting into the Mongo. I want to just I'm getting the JSON. I want to store in the MongoDB. Then the MongoDB is fine. The Redis is the extra mechanism. I thought in this case.
Okay. Fine, Dinesh. Like I'm done with my part of the questionnaires or the technical discussions. Maybe the person has communicated with me. Get back to you on the feedback. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thanks, Dinesh. It was nice talking with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, brother.